seen a blind man cross the road, trying to make the other side, baby? Ever seen a young girl growing old, trying to make herself a bride? So what becomes of you, my love?
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Pray that he's still out there, somewhere.
Shalom and welcome to the very first broadcast on the Lamb Messianic network of our ministry, Eating Wild Honey and Locusts. It's brought to you from the United Kingdom, Rugby, Warwickshire, where the game was invented. My name is Jessica Knock. Now, my husband and I, we have been seasoned preachers, itinerant ministers for over 25 years. But that changed, that ball game changed come 2019 when the pandemic hit this nation and globally. For us, we realized that we had to take a different stand. And this has been, since that time, our pursuit in Torah. It's not that we've moved out of churchianity into Christianity, from Christianity into Torah, but we saw that the church, the denominations at large, were not giving answers, were not speaking to the nation, were not speaking to the congregation and addressing anything that was happening from a biblical perspective. And that frustrated us. We couldn't be silenced. And in that process, we got together with people in the United Kingdom, Australasia, as far as Africa and Europe, through these 2 years on an online basis where we were walking in friendship or we were walking in ministry relation, where we had the privilege to lead and walk with others to discover and understand biblically what is happening at this time. And that's the purpose for this program today. That's the reason that I accepted the invitation, because we can walk and we can learn from a Hebraic understanding the times that we are living and biblically how to apply that into these times. You know, I'm not a host, I'm a minister, I'm a preacher, and I care for my nation. I care for my home nations, Australasia, UK, the countries that I am in contact with, and I see the pain and the unanswered questions that you have. And that is why I accepted from the founder of this Messianic Lamb Network the invitation to come on board so that we can walk together. Forget about man's doctrine, forget about the way that we have been suppressed, and understand through the Torah the feasts. Because, you know, it's important to understand the feasts if we want to know when our Yahuwah is coming back for us. We need to understand the times. We need to understand the basis of the word. And for me, the names of God, the names of Yahuwah, of Yahusha, of Ruach HaKodesh are important. When you say it in Hebrew, you feel the very power and breath and essence coming out. And these type of things are important to walk with the elect and to run with those that are called and chosen. So first and foremost, I want to thank the founder of this channel, Mark David Smith, for the invitation coming on the back of celebrating 10 years as you go from your launch and now as you go forward, because these are significant times. And so for the time that we have left, that we have now, I want to utilize this and navigate this journey with you, because so many of you said, we've not been addressed. You're tired of this speech in the UK. I can speak for the UK. All it has been is a rehearsed speech. We are in unprecedented times. We have to have faith over fear, but there is nothing else to it. By the time the vaccines came about, it was be like Jesus. That's what the church would say. Take the vaccine and love thy neighbor. That is rubbish. It doesn't help you. And how does it help your eternal destiny? How does it help you navigate and understand where we are and what's happening? We can't have closed and shut eyes to what is happening around us. What is the point of praying about seeing the evil and putting on our weapons of warfare if we won't stand up and recognize what our weapons of warfare are in the first place? So there are people that are realizing that they have been deceived, that they have been let down, not only by their governments, but by their church, by their ministers, by their pulpits, the pastors, the speakers, who are only interested in continuing to add their finances, to build their offerings, because with no people present in a church, the offerings have gone down. And all these ministers have been thinking about for the last 2 years is, how can I build my church? Not how can I save that person? That's why this program is here today. That is the purpose. It is for you. It is for you. And I thank you because you have walked this journey with us for 2 years. And then come last October, we came into a relationship with Dr. Pidgeon, who I'm going to be introducing very shortly. And all of a sudden, there was this excitement, just like this, an excitement. Jessica, who is this man? He's answering questions that I've been seeking. I don't understand completely what he's saying. I'm replaying and replaying his videos. I'm looking into his blogs, but he's giving me answers. It's giving me a relationship with who you call Yahuwah that I used to call Jesus. By the way, please, for those of you who are more matured in the Torah world, be graceful when I interchange and I say Jesus, when I say God, when I say Holy Spirit. We have to be a point of contact to those people that are joining us in this program, watching live and watching recorded, because they are on a journey. Let me tell you, their journey is either they have left the church and they're in a wilderness on their own and they're pursuing or they're questioning Torah, or they're still in the church, but they're not getting the answers and they're coming here. So our testimony is important. So bear with me and have a laugh with me when I don't pronounce the Hebrewic names correctly when reading from the Cepher. But know my heart in this, because we are in specific heavy times. In fact, today when I come with this program to you, I'm heavy-hearted, because I have just got information coming through, intel coming through, that if it's going to come to pass, and it will, that by June 2022, that's just a couple of months away, folks, we're going to be already introduced in the United Kingdom to the digital passport. The thing never went away. The passport never went away. It just got hidden and quiet when the thing with Russia and Ukraine come up. But it's coming back. It's coming back. That was the purpose for the G7 last year, to bring in the G7. And my heart's heavy with that. The social system, the cashless society, all these things within my own nation, where my children are, where our congregations are, where I fellowship with you, are going to hit us. And it's not just in the United Kingdom. It will be globally. So, time is short and we have to utilize this well. In the Basora of Matthew, that's the Gospel of Matthew, for those of you that don't know, chapter 24:14 says this, and I love it. It's beautiful, especially as you read it from the Cepher. And this Basora of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness into all the nations, and then the end shall come. This is simply my heart. This is our passion and our mandate for these programs. It's not about having a show. It's not about having an opportunity to minister, but to bring content that is going to deliver you and change your lives. That's what it's about. And I'm so privileged to partner with a mentor and someone so strong in the word, discerning of these times, knowing how to show us to live with the word weighted against what is happening in our nations globally. He has such academia and understanding of these things. And I don't gloat and give glory to man. I give glory to Yah. But he places people in your path to lead you and direct you. And this is the privilege that I have in bringing these programs to you, that we can walk this journey together, not just now eating wild honey and locusts, Shane and Jessica, but with Cepher and Dr. Pidgeon, where we can get a bigger picture of how to live, survive, and endure. Is that not what Revelation is about? I just want to go straight and lay a foundation before I bring Dr. Pidgeon on to join and share from his heart as he feels led. You cannot argue with me, none of you can, that we have not for the last 2 years been living in perilous times. definitely on a national and a global front, we have been living in times of abomination like never before. Prophetically, we are living out of the books. We need to be concerned, therefore, when the tribulation is going to affect us. What does that mean for you personally? When will it happen? What are the signs? Is it the beginning? How do we survive? How do we go forward? You cannot ignore this. I say this to you because those of us who have come out of the church system, not all churches, but some, and most of them, I know the one that I was in, it silenced me, it silenced you. You have no opportunity to bring these questions because you're called a conspiratist. You're called weird. But actually, you're not the conspirator. You're the one that is so close to the heavenly realm, and you're trying to burst through and understand, but you're being suppressed. And this is what we've got to overcome. And that's why we are a community here on this channel where we gather together and we support one another. We bless and we teach and we instruct one another. Because if you're called to teach and protect the people that you protect, you're called to instruct them and to teach them. Folks, this program is nothing less than tribulation instruction for the called out ones, for the elect, for the anointed, for those growing, asking questions, knowing that there's more to it, that they have to find this. Be like the Berean Jew, because it is your duty. You cannot be under the synagogue. You cannot be under your rabbi, under your pastor, under the pulpit, looking for the anointing Sunday by Sunday or Saturday. I'm fine. That will get me by. You have to search the scriptures for yourself. You have to be like the Berean Jew and apply Acts 17 into your life. You know, they will know to be more noble than the Jews of Thessalonica because they tested every word that the Apostle Paul gave to them to see that it was true. I love from First Chronicles, the sons of Issachar, they were known for having an understanding of what was required for Israel. You require to have an understanding of what is happening in our nations, in this time, in this season. It's nothing less and it's much more. But remember always that Yah has a plan. It's revealed through scriptures. And whilst it shows us how to navigate these times, it also shows us how to lay in trust and faith and endure and stand and stand and stand when we can do nothing else. I thank you for those that have joined here today and who will be watching, because you specifically asked with these programs, you specifically asked for certain things to be addressed. You're tired of the apostasy that you've had for the 2+ years, the false doctrine, the lack of understanding, and that's what you're seeking to find here. And I pray that we will be able to facilitate you and take you through that Red Sea, take you through that Jordan, and we take the spoils with us and we understand where we are going. In Isaiah 56, it speaks about the watchman. I'm reading from the Cepher again. Isaiah 56, verses 10 to 11. His watchmen are blind. They are all ignorant. They are like dumb dogs. They cannot bark. They're sleeping, lying down, loving the slumber. Ye, they are greedy dogs, which never have enough of their own thing. They're shepherds that cannot understand. They look at their own ways, everyone for his own gain in their own quarters. Come, they say, I will fetch wine, and we will fill ourselves strong with drink. And tomorrow shall be like today, but much more abundant. Wake up and smell the coffee. That's what the secular world say. The kingdom of believers will say it's for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. Wake up. This is unsound doctrine that we are moving away with. And today we are saying we're journeying in this together. That wine, it can mean in some cases doctrine, good doctrine, but in this case, it's unsound doctrine that I am referring to. Again, let me remind you, it is to edify and speak and equip the remnant, those who are set apart and have been on a wilderness journey and are now just putting the pieces together. Stand on your wall. be it a lonely journey, and blow your shofar and sound the warning. Blow your shofar and sound the warning. Do not be afraid. Don't be dismayed, and don't be discouraged that you are called a conspirator, that you are the mad one. No, you're not. You are the prophet. Ezekiel 33 says, and I'm summarizing it rather than reading it, if you do not say to those and give a warning, then their blood will be on your hands. But if you speak to them and you declare the alarm, you sound the alarm, and they take no notice of you, their blood is on their own hands. So there is a responsibility when you bring messages like this, when you bring discussions like this, when you present a program with depth like this. I don't want blood on my hands. I want to impact the kingdom for Yah's sake and to walk with God's people in this journey. So let's have eyes to see and ears to hear. Today, just before I bring Stephen Pidgeon on now, this is the precipice for what we're speaking about in the rest of this hour. We're looking at Behold the White Horse, Revelation 6. Now, Revelation 6 has 7 seals, and 4 of them are are 4 riders. In the Gospel of Matthew, it simply says this: everything I read is from the Cepher. So it's Matthew 24:3, Basura Mathanatu, I think is how you pronounce it. Then the Talmudim came unto, that means the disciples, Yahuwah privately, saying, tell us, when will these things be? And what will be a sign of the coming and the end of this world? Verse 4 goes on to Yahusha, saying and answering, take heed that no one deceives you. Pay attention to that. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Mashiach, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but in the end is not yet. For nation must come against nation, kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. What I want to bring to your attention here is this. Notice that the very first 4 things that came out of Yahuwah's, our Messiah's mouth, when he said this to his disciples, are the very first 4 things that coincide with the first 4 seals. I'm starting with the second. We'll get to the first. The second, Yahuwah speaks about war. The third, Yahusha speaks about famine. The fourth, Yahusha speaks about pestilence. And let me tell you, that's not a man-made pestilence, not one made in a gain-of-function Wuhan lab, one that is asserted. This is a real judgment. But now let's see what happens in the first seal. You know, one thing that you have to understand about these seals is to each description of the seal, there is just one very short, sometimes 2 very short verses. And that's why you need to look at the Greek and look at the Latin to see what's in the rider's hand on the white horse. In Shazon, Revelation 6, verse 2, it reads simply like this. And I saw and behold a white horse, and he sat on him, had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. Here only one verse is given to work out what is in his hand. In his hand he had a bow, and a crown was given to him. This is the crux. Listen to this. The bow in Greek means toxon. Bow in Hebrew means the simplest of fabric, that nappy that we have been subjected to wear for over 2.5+ years. That's the paper and the linen representing that mask. To conquer and be conquered. Make no mistake. Just look back. To conquer and be conquered. The crown means he conquers. Reflect back and you can see that I'm talking biblically. I'm not making this up. He accomplishes. It will not fail. And in light of what I said, that we in the UK and globally are about to hit horizons, you can see how this is conquering and to be conquered. Yeah. But listen, when you look deeper beyond the Hebrew and beyond the Greek, this is what throws light. Yeah. The word crown means corona in Latin. I don't know if you got that, but that's startling. The word in Latin crown means corona. Don't focus on the Antichrist. This is a deceptive, destroying angel. Remember, the first thing that Christ said in Matthew 24, Yahushua said in Matthew 24, see that you are not deceived. See that no one deceives you. We have been deceived for 2+ years from those in the pulpit, those not speaking, those who are defending a 5013C narrative, those who are descending their inland revenue and not speaking anything contrary to government policy so that they are protected, their pockets are protected. We do not make merchandise of the word. And there is far more to this. You know, my husband, he taught me that this Yah uses the destroying angel 27 times throughout the word. So why would he not do that again in this situation now that we are in these judgments? There's no difference. There's no reason why that would not happen. Our religious leaders have let us down. They have deceived us. And the word is, see that no one deceives you. Now, we must not be those sheeple. We must lead and we must speak out. So as I come to a close, I want to say this to you. Every apocalyptic book is there for a purpose. It is tribulation, preparation. It is preparation how to live under the supernatural, under the manna, and live in a faith that only you can grasp when you come into this level of relationship in Yah. The book of Revelation, the prophetic books are simply this, about deception, martyrdom, but remember and hold on to this. Both Yahweh and Yahushua and Yahuwah are in control. They are in control. So I bless you. And at this point, I want to introduce and welcome Dr. Stephen Pidgeon. Thank you so much for being here. It's such an honor to have you. Welcome.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you. I want to thank you for having me. I know I'm probably going to be a great disappointment to many people who are watching going, who is this guy you brought in again?
No, I'm going to introduce you in a moment. So before you share from your heart. We've been speaking about we're going through the seals and we've been addressing from a summarization point of view for you to go deeper. And I know this is your area of expertise on the white horse and the first seal, what's in his hand and the crown. But before we get there, let me introduce you. This is Dr. Stephen Pidgeon of Cepher Publishing. He is the president and CEO of Cepher. He is a political scientist with a doctorate of philosophy. He's in collaboration with students that together have created that Cepher publication that I've mentioned, a comprehensive reconstruction of sacred scripture translated into English. Dr. Pidgeon he's studied in many languages, Greek, Hebrew, Russian, French, and Spanish. He is an avid musician, so talented, and academia, it just continues throughout. So it's a real privilege to have you here, Dr. Pidgeon, and to introduce you to Australasia and the UK and European audience, and to have that teaching that you will bring and that we navigate in this program, the one we're going to specifically do on Cepher, to questions that are unanswered for these times. So let me hand the floor over to you.
Well, thank you, Jessica. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. The thing is with me, the part that I think a lot of people don't know about me is that I also was engaged in ministry for some time at the beginning of the century in Eastern Europe.
Wow.
So I spent quite a bit of time in Russia and in the nation of Georgia and also in Greece, and working with the people there in terms of, getting some kind of an understanding of what was happening in this, world of faith. Mm. And it was very eye-opening for me to learn and to be on the ground and to see what was going on inside the countries. And so because of that, I have seen some aspects to, I have seen Russia from the inside. Okay. So it's not a guess to me. I've been inside Georgia, which is really kind of the cultural hidden secret, if you will, of the Russian culture. Now, I have not been in Ukraine, but as a lawyer, I represented many, many people who were from Ukraine, many people seeking asylum from the government in Ukraine in the United States. And, anytime you do an asylum case, you get information that is, that you're privy to that other people aren't. And so I have known for a long time about, groups like Right Sector and Azov and some other groups on the ground in Ukraine and how they were treated by the government, were handled by the government. And plus, I've watched with very keen interest what has happened in Ukraine since the Orange Revolution, which was sponsored by George Soros. And again, these revolutions happened because there was something very interesting that took place with the collapse of the Soviet Union. Now, the Soviet Union, was, people don't want to talk about it, but it was an adventure in political science sponsored by American bankers, primarily Jacob Schiff and Andrew Carnegie, who spent billions of dollars funding this fellow, Vladimir Ulyanov, who became known as Lenin. And the idea was to create a political party that would overthrow Tsarist Russia. And Tsarist Russia was, a conspicuously Orthodox nation, Eastern Orthodoxy. And this nation, Moscow itself, had the largest number of churches of any city on earth at the time of the Tsars. It was not only an actual number, but it was also a per capita number. And so you can see the elements of, in fact, when I traveled into Russia, I was absolutely shocked to see all these churches. It's like, aren't you guys communist? I thought you guys were an atheist communist nation. And you've been that way for 70 years. What's with all the churches, But whether you go into St. Petersburg or you go into Moscow, you're going to find churches. And it's the same thing in Georgia. I visited a church in Georgia that had been built in the 500s, 500 AD, right? And the Georgian Orthodoxy has its own long-standing tradition. So when you look at Eastern Orthodoxy, when we talk about the Christian faith in general, there is a predecessor to the Christian faith that is other than Rome or Constantinople. Now Istanbul, which was the faith in Britain. The faith in Britain was established and birthed around 36 AD, and this is pretty well known by British historians, that the faith was birthed in this area called Silesia, which is now what we know as Wales or Devonshire, or down there near Cornwall in this area, southwestern tip of Britain. This is where the faith was birthed in Britain, and it was birthed in Britain 300 years before it was birthed in Rome. Okay. 300 years before it was birthed in Rome. And so for 3 centuries, the faith was being practiced on the British Isles and being persecuted by Rome. And so the very famous story of Caradoc and his family being transported out of the British Isles, taken to Rome under captivity. His speech is still taught in the elementary schools in Britain today, of him saying, look, easy for you to kill me, but why not show mercy? And so the Roman Caesar did show mercy, but took his whole family captive. Well, his whole family are the people that are named at the end of the book of Romans. Who do you think Paul is talking to? He's talking to the family of Caradoc, who were in captivity in Rome. And,
that is amazing.
Oh, yeah. And so when you find out that Lucius, for instance, who was a direct grandson of Bran the Blessed, who married the sister of Miriam, the mother of the Messiah, who had also attended in Britain with Joseph of Arimathea. You see, there were a group of disciples that came into the British Isles with Joseph of Arimathea. Joseph of Arimathea, I hope you can go with me on this for a little bit, Jessica. But Joseph of Arimathea was he was known as Nobilis de Curie under his Latin name. He managed 70 ships, and he was engaged in the tin trade from Cornwall and from Wales, bringing tin into the Middle East, primarily into Egypt and into Israel, because tin, of course, was mixed with copper to create the brass alloy. We know that Moses had access to a brass alloy when he made the brazen serpent on the pole. Well, the copper, and they can prove the location of these metals because they have a particular fingerprint. So they know the tin came from the British Isles, and they know the copper came from the Great Lakes of the United States. So there were ships mining in the Great Lakes of the United States around 1500 BC. as they were mining also in the British Isles, mining tin. Well, it came to pass that a certain businessman, Joseph of Arimathea, would control these mines, and he controlled the shipping. So he was very, very wealthy, and he also was a disciple of the Messiah. Why was he a disciple of the Messiah? Well, let's take a look at Matthew 1. Now, this is the very first chapter in Scripture. But this chapter is extremely challenging. Why is it so challenging? Because in virtually every English Bible, you have a problem. Well, what's the problem? Well, I'm sure you have been taught, Jessica, as have many of the people in the church, that Mashiach is in the direct lineage of the line of David, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Isaiah 11:1 says what? Isaiah 11:1 says, a rod shall come of the stem of Jesse, right? So the stem of Jesse is a very important part of the prophecy of this coming Mashiach that's prophesied in Isaiah. Very important that the Messiah come from the line of Jesse. It's extremely important. All right. So now you have a bit of an issue because we have to draw now. So that's one part of it. The second part of the equation is this. When you get to Menasha the King, who was the grandson of Hezekiah, Menasha was an evil and wicked king. He is the one who sawed Isaiah in half. He is the one who reigned over Israel for 55 years. He was the one that let the temple fall into disrepair as he exalted Molech and Baal and all the Baalim and Astarte and so on and so forth. All these other gods, they were permitted. Totem poles were allowed to be put up. You know, let's put up the Astarte pole. Let's put up the high places of incense. Let's sacrifice our children and pass our children through the fire to Molech. Let's worship Dagon, the fish god. All of these things were exalted under Menashe as he despised the Torah, as he despised the temple, as he despised Yahweh. And so after 55 years of this, Yah says, that's it. Judgment will come upon Judea. Judgment will come upon Judea. Well, what are you talking about? And so only his grandson, Josiah, Yoshiyahu, he comes in and says he finds a Torah scroll in the temple. What is this? Right? And he digs through it and he's reading it. Hey, what? What? And he's reading the Torah for the first time. Yeah. And he's going, wow, this is incredible. So as he reads through it, he says, we need to reinstate ourselves to this Torah. We have to do these things. So they cleared out the temple. They repaired the temple. They made it clean again. They made it new again. This is the first temple, right? They made it new again. They brought it back up to where Solomon had it. And then he tore down the high places. He tore down the temples of Baal. He tore down the incense burning altars to Molech and the Astarte poles. He tore all that down. Well, as he finishes this, Yah comes to him and says, you know, Josiah, I have already cast judgment on Judea. The judgment has already been cast. But for your sake, it will not happen in your lifetime. It's going to happen in the lifetime of your sons. And once it happens in the lifetimes of your sons, then your sons, your seed, your Y DNA will never sit on that throne again. It's done. You're out, right? Okay. So then we see that what takes place. His son, Jeconiah he takes the rightful position as king. And then Nebuchadnezzar comes and says, you're coming out of here. And he takes him to Babylon with him and appoints in his stead his brothers, Jehoiakim, and ultimately Zedekiah. And so these are the brothers of Jeconiah. And none of them are deserving to be the king. Yah has already cast this in stone. The kingship, its rightful kingship, is in the hands of Jeconiah. So then, of course, the temple is destroyed, Jerusalem is destroyed, and Judea is destroyed. And the wealthy and the prominent citizens are taken into captivity, leaving only a remnant behind who then get into a small civil war and ultimately abandon Judea entirely. Okay, So when you see this now, we realize that the Mashiach has to come from what? The seed of the woman.
Yes.
The Mashiach cannot come from the seed of the man. So the seed of the woman, however, the woman must be tied directly to the line of Jesse. All right, now let's take a look at Matthew 1. Now, when you look in your average scripture, your average Bible, you're going to see something that appears in all of them. And it says what? So in chapter 1, verse 17, so all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations. And from David unto the carrying away unto Babel are 14 generations. And from the carrying away unto Babel unto Mashiach are 14 generations. So it's very clear in every NKJV, KJV, AV, Schofield Bible, and NIV, ASB, the Brown Bible. It makes no difference which version you read. They read the same. Okay. 14, 14, and 14. Now, when you look through this litany in Matthew 1, we start going along here and we see a number of things. Okay. So, for instance, when you get to verse 5, you see the phrase, and Salma begat Boaz of Rahab. Now, Rahab, you remember her? She was the harlot, Rahab, the prostitute, who had lied about the guys being in her fortress, right? Here's Boaz begat Salma begat Boaz of Rahab. So here's a woman named, a wife named, but she's not counted in the count. And Boaz begat Oved of Ruth. Okay, but guess what? Ruth is not in the count either. And then when you get to chapter 6, and Yishai begat David the king, and David the king begat Shalomah of her that had been the woman of Uriah. So they won't even name her Bathsheba. But so that's woman number 3. So we have 3 women in here, 3 wives in here, 3 mothers in here who are in the count, but not counted. So when we count up to this, when we get to David, we're going to get to 14. Now, once we leave David, we begin the count, and we get Shalomah, and we get Rechavam, and we get Abiyahu, and then we get Asa, and then Yehoshaphat, and then Joram, and then Uzziyahu, and then Jotham, and then Achaz, and then Yekiskiyahu, that's Hezekiah, and then Menasha, Ammon, and Ammon begat Yoshiyahu or Josiah, and Yoshiyahu begat Jeconiah or Jeconiah and his brethren about the time they were carried to Babel. Okay, that's 14. But you notice that in this count, going from David all the way here to Jeconiah, each one of these people named are kings. Yes. And they're kings of Judea. Each one of them are kings. If you go into 1 Kings, you'll read it, or 2 Kings, you'll read it. Go into Chronicles, you read it. These were the kings of Judea, and this is their succession and order. Now, after they were brought to Babel, every one of these names that are coming from here were rightful kings, but who could not sit on the throne because of the curse, because of Menasha. Okay? So after Jeconiah, then we begin the count. Shealtiel, that's 1. Zerubbabel, 2. Abihud, that's 3. Eliakim, that's 4. Azur, that's 5. Tzadok, that's 6. Joachim, that's 7. Eliel, that's 8. Elazar, that's 9. Matan, that's 10. Yaakov, that's 11. Yosef, that's 12. Who was the husband of Miriam? You can't count her because we don't count women in the line. So then 13 is Yahusha. Well, I thought you said there was 14. I thought that verse that we first looked at, it said there were 14 generations. Why are there only 13? And if we're counting Yaakov, the husband of Miriam, which is what it says in average English Bible, that's Joseph, the husband of Miriam, right? And if you recall, we see that every one of his forefathers from the time of David to Jeconiah was a king, correct?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's go to Luke 3. And let's see what's going on in Luke 3. because in Luke 3, we've got another lineage. And the lineage we have in Luke 3 is given just the other way. It's given backwards, right? It's given backwards. And just have to find it. Here we go.
Yeah.
So this is given backwards. Instead of going from Abraham forward, we're going to go from Joseph backwards. So in verse 23, it says, and Yahusha himself began to be about 30 years of age, being as was supposed. The son of Yosef. Okay, so this is Yosef. Who else? What other Yosef do you know was supposed to be his father if it wasn't the husband of Miriam? You know of any other?
No.
No, this is the only one.
Yeah.
Okay, but who are his ancestors? Well, Eli. Well, that ain't right, because that's not who the father. Yaakov was the father of Joseph in the first one, but here the father is Eli. Then all of a sudden, he's the son of Matithyahu, the son of Levi, the son of Malchi, the son of Yana, the son of Yosef, the son of Matithyahu, the son of Amos, the son of Nahum, the son of Eliuanai, the son of Nogah. Who are these people? They're not named at all in the litany in Matthew 1. And even more important, when we finally do get back to David, we find out that this lineage is not through Solomon, but is through Nathan. This is through Nathan. It's not through Solomon. And none of these names here were kings. None of them were the kings. So what is going on? So Luke 3 in your average English Bible directly contradicts Matthew 1. And together, when you put the two of them together, you have to conclude that there is nothing in your scripture that shows Mashiach being in the line of Jesse, the father of David.
Wow.
Nothing.
See, that's so mind-blowing. That is completely new. That will be new to so many. You need to digest that. I need to transcript that and take it in, because I've certainly never heard that. And that really just blows away this doctrine that we have grown up with, that we have known. I have no words. It's just new, too new.
But Mashiach is in the line of Jesse, because the word that is errant is in Matthew 1, verse 16. And Yaakov begat Yosef, the father of Miriam. Now, all of a sudden, because Yosef was also her father's name, we discover that Miriam now becomes number 13 and Yahusha becomes number 14. Now the numbers add up, all predicated on one word that used to say husband of Miriam, but actually meant father. Now, why would it say that? Well, it has to do with the Greek word there, which actually means guardian. Now, you could construe it as husband, but it can also mean guardian. And the difficulty with the Gospel of Matthew is that the Gospel of Matthew is written, and I think you would accept this, the Gospel of Matthew is written after the crucifixion and resurrection of Mashiach. Would you agree with that?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, because it gives us the history of the crucifixion and resurrection, right? Okay, so because of that, we know that Matthew was after that. But when you look at the crucifixion, who do we not see at the cross? In fact, who do we not see mentioned at all during the ministry of the Messiah? Joseph, his father. He's not mentioned at all.
Yeah.
Where is his father? Where is his father? Well, we have some clue, because remember that two of the disciples of Mashiach were his brothers, Yaakov and Yehuda. Now, of these two, one of the disciples comes to Mashiach, and Mashiach says, pick up your cross and follow me. And he says, I first must go bury my father. Who was it that said I must go bury my father? And which father was he burying? Now, the Gospels don't tell us, but there is a chance that they may have been referring to Joseph.
Wow.
Okay, so if Joseph is not living at the time of the crucifixion, he's dead, he's gone. If he's not living, then who can get the body off the cross? Now, let me ask you, Jessica, somebody dies downtown. Can you go down there and say, "Hey, I'm a well-established business person. I want the body." You're not getting the body.
No. Yeah, absolutely not.
It's not going to happen. And Roman law was in effect at that time in Judea. You had to be the patriarch of the family to get the body. Who gets the body of Messiah?
It should be the family, shouldn't it? The brothers.
Well, it was the guardian of the mother, Joseph of Arimathea.
Interesting. Right.
So Joseph of Arimathea goes and, quote unquote, begs the body from Pilate. Right? This is in Matthew 23. He begs the body from Pilate. So Joseph of Arimathea is the one who gets the body. Why? Because he was the maternal grandfather.
Oh, I see.
Now, who are we talking about now in Matthew 16, where it says, and Yaakov begat Yosef, the father of Miriam? Joseph of Arimathea. So now you see why there was a close relationship between Joseph of Arimathea and the Mashiach and Miriam. And there is, I'm reading a book right now, The Lost Disciples, that discusses Joseph of Arimathea's arrival in Britain in 36 AD when he packed up the disciples who were his friends. Now, Joseph of Arimathea, in addition to being known as Nobilis Decuriae in Rome, was also on the Sanhedrin in Israel, in Judea, and was also one of the 70 appointed by Mashiach. He was one of the initial 70, the initial anointed. And so he was severely persecuted following the resurrection of Mashiach. He was persecuted. Remember, James, Yaakov, was beheaded in Jerusalem, and Joseph of Arimathea was beaten, I think, 4 times. And this is a guy who's bringing tin in there, who's supplying thousands of people, and he's got 70 ships. So he packs everybody up that he knows, his family, they pack up and leave. And they left in 36 AD, and they left with Simon Zelotes, Simon the Zealot. They left with Aristobulus V, who would become the first bishop of London. They left with Miriam. They left with Anna, her sister. And they came back into Britain. And it was Anna, the sister of Miriam, who married Bran the Blessed. And Bran the Blessed then would have these children, one of whom was Caradoc. And one of his grandsons was Lucius, who would become Luke, the author of the Gospel of Luke, the author of the book of Acts, the author of 2 Thessalonians, and likely the author of the book of Hebrews. All of this done by Luke. Wow. And Luke, why was Luke so accomplished? Because he had grown up in the British Isles, which at that time was the intellectual center of all Europe. That's where there was massive studying going on, massive intellectualism that was happening. And so the king of Cilicia would become a quote unquote follower of Messiah in 36 AD. And this line would cause the faith to continue to bloom out of Cardiff. Primarily, people want to talk about it was in Glastonbury. It was in Glastonbury. Well, it wasn't in Glastonbury. It was in Cardiff. And Cardiff, there used to be an island there that was called Avalon. But that one side of the creek is dried up, so it's gone. But the other side of the river, which comes down there right alongside the castle, there's a park right behind the Cardiff Castle. And if you go into that park, you will find there is a foundation marker of an ancient abbey that used to sit there. Yeah,
I've seen the photos. You've shown them on Cepher. Yeah.
Yeah, and inside that abbey at the far rear corner on the right was the grave of Joseph of Arimathea, which was the subject of pilgrimage for 400 years. Now, all of this is going to change. So you have the faith burgeoning here is blooming in Wales and in southwestern Britain. And that rises almost up to Liverpool. I mean, you're talking about all the way through Wales and all the way across into Devonshire, but it doesn't reach London. Although it does when Paul shows up. Because when Paul came into Britain, he came in through Plymouth, and then he walked his way up to Mount Lud in London. And it is from Mount Lud that he preached. And on Mount Lud is where they built the church, which is now called St. Paul's, right?
Really? Central London? Wow.
Central London. Yeah.
That's popular. Everyone can relate to that here watching today, especially if they live in the UK or visited. This is enough.
So St. Paul's, and so again, in the Cepher, we have this chapter 29, Acts 29. Now, Acts 29 became very volatile for many people because they said, well, we've never seen that before. Well, what's it doing in the Cepher? How come you guys have Acts chapter 29 and no one else has this chapter? Well, first of all, the chapter went unfound for years. And there were reasons why it went unfound. Because the Roman Church claimed apostolic succession. And you have to remember that in Britain, there was a real contest between the British version of the faith and the Roman version of the faith. This was a huge contest. And there's always been this push and pull. There's been a Brexit going on, if you will, of Britain to Rome since the very first, in fact, before the first century. Julius Caesar tried to take the British Isles and was defeated by the troops in Wales, by the Silesians, who used longbows to do it. And he had to flee the British Isles. Well, Hadrian would come back and accomplish what Julius Caesar couldn't do and push all the way to Scotland, right, where he would erect Hadrian's Wall. But even then, there was a pushback. But let's go back to this history, because in Acts 29, so here's the history of Acts 29, which is published in the Cepher as the final aspect of the book of Acts. We know that in the average Bible, the book of Acts does not end with amen, right? You just kind of come to this conclusion. Well, during the reign of Louis XVI in France in the 1780s, Louis XVI commissioned a guy named Sonini, and he said, I want you to go to Constantinople, which is where they found thousands of copies of the New Testament in Greek, over 20,000 copies, right? When Constantinople fell to the Muslims, most of those copies came forth into the Netherlands, and a new Textus Receptus was crafted by Desiderius Erasmus, and which was corrected by Beza, and which ultimately resulted in what's called the Stephanus Textus Receptus. But those were documents taken from Constantinople following its collapse in 1453. So after this would become a Muslim enclave, and they would take over the Hagia Sophia, the Church of Holy Wisdom, which was the most important church in the world at that time. So when they took this over, they retained a bunch of manuscripts in the basement of this church. And so Sonini shows up and he contacts the Sultan named Ahmed, and he says, hey, where are the good copies of the gospel? And the Sultan says, look, I know where all the best stuff is. Let me show you. So he takes him down and he shows him. And Sonini discovers this manuscript of the book of Acts that reports that Paul did not die in Rome. Now, I'm going to say something very radical here, Jessica. And I hope you can abide me on this, okay? Rome has taken a position that says we are going to abolish the Shabbat that is written of in the Old Testament, and it's written of, there's probably no more important topic in the Old Testament than the Shabbat. We're going to abolish the Shabbat, and we're going to call anyone who recognizes the Shabbat a Judaizer, and we're going to enforce the Roman day of worship on the day of the sun, because Constantine was a sun worshiper. He worshipped Mithras.
Yeah.
So we're going to change the Shabbat from the seventh day over to Sunday. And we're going to do it by force. And we're going to show you that this is the authority of Rome. And then Rome went on to say, we have so much authority, we can change the text of the Bible, because in our hierarchy, it is God, and then the in place of God on earth, right? Vicarius Filio Dei, the Pope, who sits in the place of the Son of God on earth, Vicarius Filio Dei. His word, followed by the church, followed by the Bible, and we reserve unto ourselves the right to change the Bible as we see fit. Hence, the Codex Vaticanus. All right? Well, one of the things they did was they perpetuated this myth about apostolic succession, claiming that Peter was crucified upside down and that he was crucified in Rome, claiming that Paul was beheaded in Rome, and therefore what? The Roman cross represents the authority of Rome to crucify Mashiach, the authority of Rome to crucify Peter, the authority of Rome to behead Paul. You see, this is what the Roman cross means. Why is the Roman cross put up in front of the church? Because you are to understand this is the tool of our capital punishment that we used to crucify your Messiah.
Wow, wow. And Dr. Pidgeon, I'm sorry to interrupt you at such a crucial point. Just to let you know that we've got about 2 minutes before we have to end. We're going to have to carry this forward because it's diverged, but I can see where you're coming from and the foundations that you're laying. So I'll just make you aware of that, give you those 2 minutes, and then I'll hand over.
Okay, well, I can tell you that if you go back and you look, and I'm going to wrap this up very quickly, but if you go back and you look, you will see that Queen Elizabeth I reaffirmed this. We are not going to follow Rome. And she required the crown to take an oath to defend the Christian faith as established in the British Isles in 36 AD, not its Roman replacement. So this is the foundation from which we will begin, Jessica. Okay?
Thank you. You know, I'm astounded. This is all new. We didn't discuss what you would be saying. I can see how it's falling into what I was sharing and how it will fill into next week. Especially this last bit about what the Queen said in Allegiant, but I necessarily don't see, but how we have suffered with the Sunday worship in Constantinople. That is important. I know the people here will want a foundation for that. So I'm going to be going back and listening over this and taking this really into heart so that we can come and go more in depth with it. But thank you today for sharing what you did. I want to really thank you and bless you, audience, for being here, community rather, for being here today. Yeah, bless you all.
Thank you, Jessica.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.
Two people laughed. Two people cried. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Ever seen a blind man cross the road, trying to make the other side, baby? Ever seen a young girl growing old, trying to make herself a bride? So what becomes of you, my love?
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Pray that he's still out there. Somewhere.